So welcome back to another episode of Uncut and Uncensored with Caroline Stanbury. And today we really are uncensored. We are with author Anoushka Warden, who has just or is about to release in the UK next month a book called I'm Fucking Amazing. I mean, I love it already. I have to say, I was reading a little bit the first chapter this morning and giggling to myself. And I think we've all been there. Welcome, Anoushka. What a book and why? Tell me everything.
Well, yeah, it came out actually in March in the UK and a couple of weeks ago in America. So, yeah, the book is out there.
Says next month on my sheet. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, no worries. No, I was just saying more like the book is quite steamy, and I was sort of like, oh my God, what's going to happen when it's actually out there? But a month on, I've just been so far getting like nice responses. But yeah, basically it was it's called I'm Fucking Amazing, and I wanted to write something that felt really just sort of real around female sexual desire, and I wasn't doing it to be shocking, but I think some people are shocked by it, but that was not like my intention. I just wanted to write something that felt like the realistic conversations I have with my girlfriends and have been having since I was, teenager, through my 20s, through my 30s, and write a book that kind of packed that all in. Which is what I'm Fucking Amazing does.
I mean, it was kind of raw. As I said, I've only read the first few pages. So from what I've read, it's I'm with your teenage self. And I'm very interested to see speak to you a little bit about how sex and learning about your vagina today has changed from, being a teenage girl. Because as far as I remember back in those days, I didn't enjoy it half as much as I like sex now, but you seem to enjoy it quite a lot back then. So how do you...
Well, to be clear, the book is fiction, so I have created a character, but of course within that character is a lot of my experiences, a lot of my friends' experiences, just trying to but no, I'm in my 40s now, and I find it really interesting, the relationship that women have as they get older in relation to their female sexual desire. I was particularly looking at the book. What I was particularly wanting to explore was how that shows up in long-term relationships. So the narrator in the book has always been sexually confident, which isn't a given. She's never felt embarrassed by what, in her words, her fanny does, what it smells, what it looks like. So she's sort of been gifted with this, confidence that a lot of teenage girls don't have. And then, explores, has fun. There's these top humps that pop up in the book, and it's quite empowered. And then she meets the guy that she wants to be with, to have her happily ever after in her early 20s. And then a few years in, the desire part of it just goes, even though the love is strong and she wants to be with him. And so I wanted to explore that. And I think it was quite realistic, certainly speaking to my, British mates. At that age, we didn't feel equipped to have those conversations. We didn't know how to. Our parents hadn't told us how to communicate around, romantic relationships. And so I gave the character this sort of thing where she can't talk to her partner about it, but instead desperately wants to solve it. So she goes off on this kind of unique mission, which involves, she creates what in her words would not be a cheating system, but a kind of unique cheating system where she goes out and meets people, gets her fanny wet from other people, and then brings that wetness home so that she can have this, exciting romantic relationship with her partner. But the point in the book is that doesn't really work out long term, because they're in a monogamous relationship where, if you want to do that, you need to be truthful, and then that becomes a different type of relationship. So, I was very much focusing on long-term heterosexual relationships. And, I'm fascinated by that. And I'm always like, how long have you been together? What's sex like? I just find it an interesting subject to explore.
How are you married?
No, I am divorced.
So I'm divorced after 18 years, and I can completely relate to this because I remember even going to a therapist and I was like thinking to myself, once the desire's gone, how do you get that back, honestly, because you've been with that person forever. I mean, the great thing I have right now with my with Sergio, I think, is going into a relationship with someone like him who's learning as well, right? We don't have any of those inhibitions of not talking to each other. We talk to each other about everything, and that's the one thing I think I really didn't have in my first marriage, just because, not through any fault of our own, I think, or his, just because of the youth of, he was in his 20s, I was in my 20s, we were taught, I think we've all grown up in England thinking sex is kind of dirty in some way, and that you're meant to have one kind of sex and we're all meant to just enjoy that. And as I've got older, I've understood that really isn't so and shouldn't be so. I mean, I've said it many times on podcasts before. Sergio and I are doing, gymnastics, and we're getting, our sex life is honestly getting better and better and better. Now, is that because he was really young when I met him? I don't know. And I'm fascinated with this topic because I have girlfriends that have been married 18 years who are now entering open relationships. I have other friends, and I'm watching this like a science project. I'm not sure whether it can work, but you may have done a little bit more research than I have.
Well, I'm a really hopeful person, and I kind of think that, like, all versions have the chance to work. But I think the overall summary of my life learnings and what I've tried to write in the book, the summary of that is nothing works if you don't have honest communication. And so my marriage, there were certain things in it where we didn't communicate honestly because we, at that age, didn't know how. And now in the relationship that I'm in, everything I've learned over my 30s, including going to therapy, I'm now in a version of a relationship that is extremely honest. But the honest communication could be two people in a heterosexual relationship where one's gone out and then they've just met someone and they've done something. And the honest version of that is being like, telling their partner that. And then that, whereas I would have never been in relationships where I would have said that kind of thing. It would have felt like as bad as cheating, which is ridiculous. It's not, but it ties into the thing you said, that certainly in this country, we have this sort of weird Victorian thing around our attraction to other people, and like, we're animals, we're going to be attracted to other people. It's how it shows up in your relationship and how you're honest about that. And if you're in an open relationship, even more so, isn't it? Like, I feel like everything I've read about open relationships is it only works if you are completely honest. And I just think that's a really hard thing for us to all do around such a vulnerable subject, which is our desire, our feelings are, half the time we don't know what we're feeling.
Well, I think, I've read, or I heard, I think it was another podcast, that 78% plus cheat. So I think when you've already got that statistic in front of you, you may as well be honest with yourselves and everyone else, right? I think when you get married, I actually be interested to know what it is on second marriages, because they always say, I feel like it's different because in your first marriage, although you love the person, you're sort of building your house, having your kids on this treadmill of what you're told you're meant to do. On your second marriage, I've already done all that. So I've got a completely different relationship with my husband than I had with my first. And, I don't think I could have ever had this relationship with my first husband and have this honesty with him because, you don't know who you are. And now I'm fully aware of who I am. And I want my husband, my current husband, to be, open and free and and that when I say free, obviously I don't want him running around having sex with other people, but I want him to be open with his feelings. Like, I don't know, whatever he wants to do. There's porn out there. There's things out there. If he's attracted to someone, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like holding on to people doesn't hold on to them.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And that sort of thing of, just being able, like, feeling in that sort of, I hate sort of this term, but it's helpful, but that sort of safe place where you can tell your partner the stuff that's going on in your head, and it not being judged, but it also not meaning, well, then she's just said she fancies her work colleague, so now I have to be stressed about that. But by actually saying it out loud, I think from all the conversations I've had with people, that almost immediately it becomes less. And the thing with sort of cheating is that sort of excitement of it being secret, but the minute you might say out loud, oh, I think I fancy Bob who sits opposite me at work, I just think it immediately becomes something else in the person's head. And that for the long-term heterosexual relationship, it would kind of be insane to not assume over like a 10, 15, 20-year marriage that we are going to have confusing feelings about other people. Like, of course we would.
Yeah. And, I think after a while, unless your sex life is evolving at home quite dramatically, I don't see how you can sustain it, because most people that I speak to in, their 40s or whatever are having, or have been married for a long time, are having the same kind of sex. You hear all the time, I can tell you what's going to happen. And that's the death of sex, right? That's why I always say, weekends away, go and get drunk together, go and have a laugh. We try and date. But I mean, also that is something Sergio takes a lot of pride in, is like having fun, and making it fun and funny and like different. And I think it's a key thing for women to keep you interested. Otherwise, like anything, it's going to get boring. But I still haven't got my head round an open relationship yet. Not that I want one, he wants one, but I'm just saying the people that I'm watching, I can't decide. I've watched another actually gay couple of friends of mine who did it, and they broke up straight afterwards and they just got married. And it's like, I don't know if that can actually work either, because you say you're being honest and you're going to have an open thing and you're both going to see other people, but then the dishonesty comes again when your feelings turn.
Well, interestingly, I've just read 2 books on that. One called The Start of Something and another one called Open Season. And they both came out in the same month as my book. And they're both sort of dealing with characters who are exploring or in open relationships. And I think the real answer is it's a massive spectrum. And I think, as with life, you've either got maybe the personality type that makes it work or not. So for me, I don't think that will ever be an option for me. I don't think I would work in an open relationship. However, a couple of my friends who are in them, again, the thing that seems, quite successfully, one friend's married, they've got kids, they've been together like 15 years, but the rules, in an open relationship, the rules are specific to each couple. So my understanding is whatever your rules and boundaries and honesty, that's probably the key of how it works. And their ones are, they always share the first moments of whoever they're about to go on a date with. Obviously, some other relationships might not have that in place, and maybe they're the ones that don't quite work out. But I kind of think anything can work. I just know for me, I would go insane.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm in this, obviously I've only been with 5 years with Sergio right now, so I can't imagine sharing him with anyone. And, we, as I said, we really have tried to keep, I think because he witnessed the end of my marriage too. And I think he's really, really taken it on like sport to keep this marriage alive, and we do everything together. So maybe it's but that also comes with my maturity as well. And again, I think that's why there are so many divorces, because, even when you're in your 20s, the pressure to get married is huge. And it's a pressure that's an unnatural pressure, because you kind of, I've always equated it to musical chairs. You just sort of grab whoever you can. That's sort of the first one that makes you feel amazing. And you don't think much further than that, because you're, technically we just got out of school. We've just finished school. We haven't found ourselves. We're going into work, and suddenly we're getting married. It's nuts. Like, what was the rush? I don't understand. Like, there is no rush.
Yeah, and hopefully that is changing it is changing with younger generations. Like with my sort of group of school friends, that sort of marriagey thing all happened in our mid to later 20s, but it still happened because we felt it should. And I've always felt quite strongly that I just don't really care about marriage at all, and I've always been quite open with that. However, it was important to my partner, and I loved my partner, and then relationships, you know, are about compromise, but also I love celebrating stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I want this day where everyone I love comes. But for me, I just didn't really care about marriage, but I was definitely the odd one, like everybody else. And that thing where if you're the odd one, you then don't really want to be the odd one, so you kind of want the same things that other people have. But I think it's just one of those things that, you know, societal norms and stuff need such a big shake-up to change that I'm sure we're on that. I'm sure we're on it, but I'd love to sit a bunch of, I don't know, 20-year-olds down, like get like 500 of them and like quiz them deeply. Like, what are your thoughts about like marriage? What do you want from the next 10 years?
So growing up, what was your different experiences like with like men and now? Like, how do you feel differently about your sex life? Do you want to, I mean, would you want to go back to your 20s? Because I wouldn't.
Oh, I think I'm quite, I have like two problems. One, I'm so like in the moment, I barely can remember anything clearly, which is kind of brilliant when I'm writing because then I'm not like sort of stuck on stuff. But I was always quite sexually confident in my early 20s, and because I wasn't looking to settle down, I just had this freedom of like fun. So yeah, I would happily go back and do that again. But also at the same time, I kind of feel like I'm still that now. But again, I don't want to get married. I don't want to have children. Sometimes I feel like I'm a bit of a like unique specimen, or it feels like I am. I'm sure there's lots of women my age who also don't want children, but it's kind of hard to see that because it feels like I definitely get a lot of pressure from people who probably don't even realise it, that they sort of find it's not even a decision, it's just in me, I don't want them. But people definitely sort of find that odd or struggle with it.
Yes, I mean, I've got childless girlfriends who are like, you know, sick of being judged because they're like, we genuinely don't want them, you know, keep yours.
Yeah.
And that's a decision, and a decision that more and more people are taking, by the way. So, you know, you're definitely not alone anymore. I think back then, again, it's like getting married. You're told that's what a woman's made for, and that's what we should, like, just as you shouldn't ask for sex because sex is really about the man and him getting his pleasure all of this. And now I think the world has just changed. You know, there's plenty of women that have decided children simply aren't for them, and that shouldn't be frowned upon. That's completely up to you, frankly. And, you know, I think it's interesting that you said you were that sexually free when you were younger, because I remember being younger and it was just, you know, they were kind of wham, bam, thank you, ma'am experiences. I never really lay there thinking this is the best earth shattering moment for me. And then, you know, and even, you know, further on from that, took me a long time to sort of relax and be with a man and feel comfortable in my own body, or even understand it, because I wasn't sexually free in my head. So, you know, I had lots of nice guys, but it was kind of like rushing through it. Whereas I think now I'm totally different. Like, I mean, as I said, like I like bedroom gymnastics, but I mean, my husband is 20 years younger. So, I mean, maybe that's different.
Yeah, no, I like that. I suppose even though I was like sexually confident, I think the difference is the people I was meeting in my 20s, they might not have been quite with me, you know, like the boys or men, or like, and some of them would be, but you know, there was still a good number of people who, like, you know, that classic, me and my friends always joke about, when you were younger and being fingered was like, men would just like shove their fingers up your hole, and it'd be like years before you're like, no guys, you need to be heading for the clitoris, and that kind of thing. But the difference was, back then I would have just said it there and then, and if they weren't up for it, I think I would have just moved on, which I feel like a lot of my girlfriends they got to that sort of like empowered conversation more like in their early 30s or whatever.
100%. I don't think most young girls even know that the clitoris really exists. I mean, they talk about it more now, but they're too embarrassed. They don't have a voice. And that's I'm actually really fascinated that you found yours so young. That is something that I mean, I feel that boys have been taught just shoving it in somehow is enough. And actually, I've got 2 sons. I don't even know how you broach that later, because, even if you give them porn to watch and learn from, that's a disaster. That's teaching them the same. So where do they learn from? I've no idea.
Oh my God, you should like sit them down and put a screen in front of you so you don't have to see each other's faces, and just be like, I'm going to tell you a little story about female sexual desire. Listen, do what you want. You can ask me questions, but let's just not look at each other in the eyes whilst we do it.
Dead.
I kind of like that.
I gave them the book once on anatomy, and I came upstairs and it was back on my bed. But yes, I'm going to try, because they're definitely at that age now where they're all buying perfume and all of this stuff. So I'm sure girls are firmly on the horizon. But no, because I think that is most boys' first foray into sex will be porn, which is the worst example.
Which, of course, is massively unrealistic and not helpful.
Not helpful at all.
Whereas when I was, coming of the age of having sex and stuff, we didn't have we just sort of had the internet, but we didn't have access to it at home. So, the odd video was there, but you could even tell from the video it was a bit shit. So in a great way, none of us were really looking towards that to help, guide us in our sexual experiences. But now it must be, I just can't really imagine what it would be like to be coming of that age now with all the access you have through social media and everything.
No, I mean, it's completely different to how we grew up, because we didn't, as you said, porn wasn't readily available anyway, so there wasn't something that we all grew up watching for sure. I think the mummy porn, we all liked Top Gun, and I think that kissing and the boys with
definitely Cocktail.
Yes,
when Tom Cruise was in.
That was it. That was all we needed. That's what we needed back then. So that was it. But and that was always my go-to and dream. But like, it's funny because I never knew, as I said, when I was younger, that I would enjoy. I'm 48 now, so having my sex life now is the best it's ever been, and we're having so much fun. And he and I really think about, just the 2 of us, things that we can do and have fun and how to improve it all the time. And I just, it always changes because we're in different places, we're in different countries and things like this. But I wonder if that is, as I said, because we're on a second marriage. I don't know. Do you think it's possible to get this again in a first marriage after a long term? Because I wish it for everyone, because I feel like sex is a massive part of a relationship. Massive.
Yeah, I think it's a massive part, and I absolutely do think it's possible in a first long-term relationship, whether that's marriage or just you've been together, whatever. But I think it always ties down to maybe you need a bit of outside help with that. If you've been together for, 15 years, and for some reason it's not really showing up in the way you want, then I think that would be sort of a conversation with a therapist between you both, and both going like willing and excited to be like, we remember it was good. How do we get it back? So, yeah, I would be like, that is definitely possible. But I think it involves like work, and commitment, which obviously if you're with someone long term, you think those things are there, but they just might not be showing up in relation to the sex side of stuff.
I mean, I think it, as I said, it's hard to have these conversations when you've had a long-term lover and then not feel like you're bruising their ego a little bit, right? And reinventing the wheel. So I think, again, it's super important to have a line of communication. And that's where I think a lot of marriages break down, as you said. It's like there will always be someone that turns your head in a long-term marriage. There will. And I think if people are more heavily prepared for that or understand that, you can navigate it. I don't understand why there is this massive thing against cheating, that once you cheat or once you have looked at someone, everything has to end for you.
Yeah, and I'm fascinated around that subject. And even though, so my book's not really dealing with that, but I've just written a TV show with someone which is exactly around that, like infidelity, and why do people literally just lose their shit over it when if someone's cheating, it is 100% about them and what they're like doing. But it's always the sort of person who has been cheated on, who sort of, spirals into whatever. And how do we just have the conversations where, well, Esther Perez has an amazing podcast which is like couples therapy, and she's talking about it. And often a moment of cheating and honesty around it can be like a really great and exciting turning point for a couple. But obviously that can only happen if you're being like advised by sort of objective people. Whereas I do it. I feel like I want to be really objective and understanding and not like kick off for like, if a good friend of mine comes and says she's been cheated on, I want to be like, oh, I wonder what the circumstances were or this. But at the same time, I want to be like, let's get him. Because I'm like, I've got those instincts in me as well.
I agree. And I think it's a natural instinct to sort of say that. But I think and sometimes it's not the right instinct. And
yeah, definitely.
I think in the world where we have so many choices today, that people are going to fuck up. They fuck up in every aspect of their lives. And, to be able to, the whole world, people lose their families, they lose their friends, they lose their homes, they lose everything for something that, as you said, is completely inbred in them. How on earth do we turn that around, that it's not so, it doesn't have to be the end. It as you just said, it can actually be the beginning. It can actually make you see your partner in a different way.
Yeah. It's interesting how everybody just sort of loses their shit over it. And also I often think about just the word sex. You and I have been using it freely, but what we really mean as women is a whole load of stuff. And I think actually, weirdly, this could tie into the talk if you ever have it with your boys, which is, we grew up, sex meant a penis going into a vagina. And that's the sort of shorthand of what that meant. And then as you get older, you're like, oh no, sex is also the bit before, like being fingered, having your clit licked. But I think often, certainly the boys I met in my 20s, that like they wouldn't have called that part of sex. And it's sort of, again, tied into, if you're in a heterosexual relationship, the sort of often orgasm gap, because it is still something like 80% of women can only orgasm through stimulation of the clitoris. Now, most of the time, that means if a penis is going in and out of their vagina,
nothing's happening.
Isn't going to reach a climax.
Nothing's happening.
And then things... Yeah, and then if sex is only going in and out to someone, then that person the woman is never going to climax. So almost, I don't know what sex education is like in school now. I can't imagine.
I mean, I don't think you want to learn that. I don't think I would want an old teacher discussing vaginal walls and lips with my sons. No, I don't know who that comes from. Maybe Sergio will have to have that conversation. But like, I have to say that, those kind of things, I honestly didn't learn till my 40s, and that's nuts. And I would want my daughter to know a lot sooner than that. You're right. What we consider foreplay, or people have said is foreplay, is actually, I think, the best. It's not foreplay. It's the main meal.
Yeah, and just the foreplay bit already sort of diminishes it in a bigger conversation. But I think, like, I've seen sort of something written in an article, which is like, that is all sex. And us just not being able to quite get our heads around. No, the whole package is sex and it's moments in it or whatever.
Yeah, because otherwise I think boys are also taught to rush the foreplay to get to the main event. And,
Exactly.
you know, and I think that if you understood that all of that is the main event, and even when you're sort of having sex, playing around at the same time is so important, because as you said, 80% of women don't orgasm through their vaginas, which is a crazy number.
Yeah.
And that's what they're being taught. And it's interesting because, you know, how the world views female stimulation anyway. I mean, on my TV show, very sadly, we've got Chanel, who's had female mutilation when she was very, very young, and which is terrible. But I mean, it just shows you another whole religious world where they feel like a woman shouldn't have it as well. So, you know, it's always been taught, I think my point is that the women come second and that it's all about the man. And actually, you know, being married to someone, you know, that really, really loves you and wants to see you, because I think women worry about how long it takes them as well. They worry about, you know, oh my God, you know, and your head starts going, you're looking at the ceiling going, oh God, it's another 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then they feel embarrassed and they, you know, and they don't want the man to work that hard. Well, actually, you know, I've learned that he doesn't mind. If a man loves you, he really doesn't mind. He wants to please you in any which way he can.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't, by the way, you're with the wrong one.
Yeah, exactly. I think once, I can't remember, like when I was younger, I feel like, because I was quite like, I'm just going to make things clear. And I think sometimes, because we all know roughly how long it takes us in a good situation to reach climax. And I think with one person, because I was sensing that, I was just like, look, it might take 40 minutes, which I think I'd basically doubled, because I was like, then it's a bonus when I come in, you know, half the time. And I just remember...
Who are you? I've never heard of a 20-year-old laying this stuff on the table. I would have said this is a 40-year-old speaking. I mean, but also just to have the balls, because I feel like young girls also get labeled whores, they get labeled sluts, they get labeled all of these things for voicing anything, because in a way it's like saying, well, I know who I am and I've had sex before. So we're so busy hiding it when you're 20, going, no, I've only had it a few times, that, you know, you've done the complete bloody opposite.
But that's just luck of the draw, isn't it? I was just sort of made that way. But that's why I wanted to write the book, because that part of the book, sort of that experience I've had where I haven't felt a lot of shame or worry around, you know, that kind of thing.
Is that due to your mother?
I wanted to well, I don't know, but I wanted to write it into a character. So I think my book is, you know, the main demographic for the book is anywhere from sort of really 20s to like mid 40s. However, what I really want is people who are a bit too young to read it, like we used to with Ginny Cooper, or, you know, to get it, because I would just love this idea that young women could maybe read something where they then are like, oh, I don't need to feel embarrassed about this. You know what I mean? I have that that was one of the reasons I wanted to write it, and I'm pleased it's out there. But no, I don't know. I honestly think people are just born with certain things, and I was just born with quite a confident personality, and I think that showed up as a like young child. So I don't think that's necessarily nurture. I think that's just nature. Like, as I said, luck of the draw.
That's amazing to have that confidence back then, as I said, when the world absolutely wasn't ready for that. I don't think young girls are labeled that way anymore. I don't think they get slut shaming as much. Or, you know, but I think these kind of things you never wanted to put on the table, because, as you said, you know, if you'd slept with 3 guys, you always used to say 1. If you slept with 10, you said 2, 5, 4. Yeah. You know, there was no number. Yeah. And even if you'd said 3 at the time, that there was no number that was the right number. And that's why I think I always said, you know, it's such a stupid way, because men could do whatever they wanted and women just couldn't. But I think that has changed. But I do feel like, you know, I feel like the young are sensible now. Like I live with three teenagers, they're sensible, but I feel like, I don't know where all these things, I don't know, like how to teach, I've got a daughter. Do you teach them about sex toys and things like this? I don't know. I mean, I've no idea. Maybe they've learned it. I'm British. How am I going to have this conversation? Should I have this conversation? Whoever's listening out there, maybe write to me. Tell me what I do with teenage boys and girls. I've no clue.
I would love it if you found a way to have that conversation, because my parents didn't with me, but I'm lucky I've got 3 older sisters. But I think that would just be so like badass and amazing if you could find a really non-cringe, awful way to be able to just go through everything, treat it like a scientific lecture. Right now we're doing the bit on sex toys and everyone's just sat there like, oh my God, Mum, go away.
I mean, dead. I don't think I could do a diagram of a vagina and take them through it. Although, you know what? We're very close. They'd all probably laugh. Maybe I'll do it on holiday. I'm going on holiday with all their cousins too, and I'll just sit them down and draw a vagina.
Not being funny. A diagram of female genital area. I don't think I could even like draw it and do it. And I'm in my, I don't feel like I got taught that properly. So I'm always a bit like, when I think of it, I'm like, I always have to Google it and be like, oh yeah, that's that and that's that. Like when I'm thinking on it for like whether I'm writing something or so. Yeah, you're already winning if you can do that without any sort of like aid.
And bottoms and different parts of the body, and men come from different places and all of this kind of stuff that I learned way later. And that also, you see, that is the one thing that you get from, obviously when you have hot sex with somebody you've just met, okay, that's hot, wild sex.
Oh yeah, that's the easy part.
That's the easy part. But nothing is as sexy as like being with your long-term partner and discovering like all the rest, because as I said, my sexual relationship today with Sergio gets better every single time we have it, and we're always like, oh, what just happened? Oh, how did that happen? And we take time, and there's never a time limit. He really enjoys what everyone else calls foreplay, and I used to rush through, and I always used to worry about him, going, do you need some water? Do you want to do you need to stop a minute and relax? And he absolutely loves it. So when you have a guy that really, really enjoys what he's doing, that changes everything for you, because you're not in this rush, you're not in a panic, you're not in, and sex suddenly changes, completely, because you can have these conversations. Nothing's embarrassing with all the body noises that can happen and things like that, which used to die if anything happened in the day. Or as you said, I think different ways vaginas look, or, people are so worried about what their vagina. I've never seen other vagina. I mean, other than, I really haven't looked at anyone else's vagina. I don't know what it's meant to look like. When a man says your vagina's pretty, you take it, okay, great. What's a pretty vagina?
Yeah, and what's interesting is, again, I didn't know those things, but weirdly was just sort of fine with whatever mine was. But now, gosh, if you were like a 16-year-old girl, there was this amazing photo exhibition that The Guardian partnered with, where a photographer had taken a picture of like 100 vaginas, and now you could just go and obviously look at them. They are all insanely different and, brilliant. But now you actually could find that online. Like, that would have been such a gift to like my school friends and I, if like we'd had access to that.
I always said, actually, because I interviewed this woman the other day, she was really interesting. She had a practical course where like apparently there's like months and months of waiting lists and all of this, and you can go as a couple or you go anywhere. You listen to it. I was fascinated, and I'm telling you, if I wasn't a public figure, I would have walked Sergio down there with me, and we'd go and have a laugh. And I think it's brilliant because, what about doing stuff like that when you're married, right? And like, okay, maybe this woman, she's older, she's, not attractive to me. I'm not looking like, or to him. It's like, okay, maybe she can teach us a thing or two. Why not? Like, if that's useful when you're older, like how, maybe there are courses for these things, or they don't always have to be practical, obviously. Hers took it to another level. But, you know, I mean, I'm older, and that, you know, maybe that's fun to do with you if you're taking your actual partner with you. You've got some homework to do when you're off on your course. But, you know, maybe for young girls, there are like interesting. We used to, when you have a hen night, we used to get the guys that taught you, you know, got the bananas and taught you to give a blowjob. Like, I don't even know, does that exist anymore? I have no clue.
I mean, yeah, absolutely, probably still for hen nights, but there's what's it called, Coco something in London, which is an amazing lingerie shop in Soho.
Coco de Mer.
And they teach. They have workshops, which is like the blowjob workshop, or they, you know, so there's definitely cool things out there. Whether it's still just some guy showing up with a banana, I don't know.
Yeah, you see, I mean, that's what I don't know, like what it's going to look like. And that's why I was so fascinated by this woman. And she's like, I am fully booked. So, you know, there are lots of people taking sex into their own hands, as it were. And sort of, I think there's a whole new sexual revolution where people are just a lot cooler. Thank God. Thank God.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
Well, I think.
I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. I mean, I could go on and on about vaginas and sex and all of this stuff because it's a fascinating topic, and I don't think we're ever going to get to the bottom of it. Cheating, foreplay, how to keep a long-term relationship together. It's an endless question. I don't think there is a right or a wrong. Sadly, you know, I think there just has to be a lot less judgment in our world to understand why people do what they do to maybe make it work and better for them. And who are we to judge people today? You know, people in glass houses, as I say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me on Uncut and Uncensored today. I hope we've helped some women out there. Don't forget, everybody, to rate and review and download. Andrea, tell everybody how to find you.
Yes, I don't know if you just want to say that bit again, because my name's Anoushka.
Oh, Anoushka, sorry.
Like if you just do the last bit of... No, gosh, don't worry at all.
Sorry. Yeah, I'll do that again. Don't forget to rate and review. Sorry. Thanks for listening, everybody. And don't forget to rate and review. Thank you, Anoushka, for joining us today. Please tell everybody how they find you.
Great. No, thank you. It's so nice to come on. I am on Instagram at Made by Noosh, and my book is available on Amazon and all the other places. And for the rest of May, there's a special e-reader deal where it's 99p to get it on your ebook. So please buy it. And maybe it's the book you give all your children, because it definitely covers all of that stuff.
Thank you. Don't forget, I'm fucking fabulous. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for listening.
I'm fucking amazing. Sorry. I'm fucking amazing.
I've got my glasses
Don't worry.
I took my glasses off and then I can't read anything anymore. It's for the video. I'm fucking amazing, everybody. So get it now. And thank you again for coming on. It was a fabulous, fun, naughty talk.